Question number 1. What are some of the best and worst moments you've had being a Florida fan? I'm going to go pretty recent because I'm too young to really remember the Spurrier years, and I was still pretty young during the Meyer years, if I'm being completely honest. The worst would honestly be the current losing streak with Kentucky. Like, losing streak to Florida State and Georgia are bad enough, but to drop 3 in a row to a team you beat literally 31 times in a row, that's rough. Shoe throw is also up there. The Georgia Southern game a while back where they beat us in the swamp without completing a single pass. That was really rough. I think crying Tebow's the worst though. The 2009 SEC Championship where we lost to Alabama, and it's sort of pointed at as the beginning of Nick Saban's dynasty and the end of, Florida's kind of 2-decade run of dominance. On and off dominance, but still. Best moments, again, recent would probably be like that 2020 Florida-Georgia game where we just absolutely kicked their ass. But overall, it's between the 97 Sugar Bowl, where we got our first national title, and probably the Gator Flop. The Gator Flop is by far one of the best moments in college football, in my opinion. Outside of Florida, what other college football programs do you like to root for, and some you won't ever root for? Going by conference, for the Pac-12, or the old Pac-12, probably Stanford and Cal. I've always had a soft spot for them. I don't really know why. I have no connection to either of them. I just think the uniforms are cool. Wouldn't root for in the Pac-12, USC. To me, when I look at them, I just see a West Coast Miami in like culture, in sort of the city they reside within. I don't like them. Big 12, I wouldn't root for Central Florida. I like Central Florida, but their success directly negatively affects Florida's success. So I almost contractually have to root against Central Florida. Would like to root for, I'm tempted to say Kansas. They're a fun underdog, especially with how bad they were in the 2010s. They're fun to see good. Big 10, like Nebraska. There's no real reason, I just think they're neat. Wouldn't root for Ohio State. They're just too big of a brand and too successful to really want to root for. So, yeah, I would have to go Ohio State. For the ACC, would never root for, besides, Florida State and Miami, of course. UNC, I think. They're a basketball blue blood that's actually pretty decent in football. So it's just difficult to really root for them. Would like to root for, actually, Clemson. I've always kind of liked them in comparison to Alabama and especially Florida State. We tend to have pretty similar rivals besides like South Carolina. Yeah, I don't mind Clemson. And the SEC would never root for Texas. Texas is Texas. It's the same with the Astros. It's the same with the Cowboys. They're just a Texas sports franchise. Would like to root for in the SEC. There's only really one correct option, and that's Vanderbilt. You always root for Vanderbilt unless they're playing your team. If you don't, then you're not a real SEC fan, let's be honest. Unless you're a Tennessee fan, that makes sense. But, yeah, Vanderbilt without a doubt. Overall, though, my second team has always been Notre Dame. I grew up Catholic, and, Notre Dame is the Catholic program. What's your opinion on FIU's football program? Don't really have one, if I'm being honest. I think the not the alternate uniforms, but the Miami Vice uniforms they had last season were pretty cool. Would you ever considering following up on the history of football video you started and left on a cliffhanger? To answer both of the questions I got on part 2s, well, the UCF one is going to be coming out pretty soon. But the history of college football video, it was my first college football video I made on this channel. In my opinion, it is pretty rough. There's a lot. The San Francisco video kind of doubled up as a lot of what I wanted to say in the original history of college football video about like West Coast football that I didn't really fit in. And that's kind of how I feel about the video as a whole. It takes one direction. It goes from the Ivies to like the Great Lakes programs to the Midwest. And the initial idea of the video was to then shift like south and kind of southwest to Texas a little bit in like part 2. But the holdup is I don't like the format. I would much rather tackle these subjects like in individual videos and be able to go more in depth with them than to do a broad strokes like history from this to this. A part 2 will eventually come out. All this to say, it's just taking a while to kind of see where I want to attack it from, because I don't want to make it similar to the last one. Is there any way to predict how this upcoming season will go? With such drastic changes across the board, I wonder if the game will feel the same. It all leads me to believe Georgia is just going to win it all because they've undergone the least change in the chaos. If Georgia wins another national title, I might get a shack in Montana and just like live there. But honestly, no. There's like general stuff, like Georgia's going to be good next year. Ohio State's going to be good next year. Michigan's probably going to take a step back, but they'll still be pretty good. I have no clue what's going to happen in the Big 12. My gut feeling says Utah's going to win it, but who knows? Who knows how Alabama's going to be without Nick Saban? But beyond, like, general, like, this team is probably going to be good. This team is probably going to be bad. I don't think UMass is going to make a bowl game. You know, the specifics, no. I don't think there's a way to really predict that. At least predict it with any level of, like, objectivity. How many college football games have you attended? Any notable ones? I've actually not attended that many college football games. Most of it's due to being a Florida fan that's lived in and around Atlanta most of my life. So the only real options I've had is go to Athens and go to a Georgia Tech game, which I've considered doing. I've just never really ended up doing for whatever reason. Or go to Old Turner Field and watch Georgia State play, which would also be heartbreaking because I miss Turner Field. So there's just not a ton of options close to me that I would actually want to watch. But I would like to change that this upcoming season. I would love to go see some good games in person. What inspired the theme shift on the channel? And the follow-up question to that, do you see more gaming/horror videos in the pipeline, or are you fully committed to the sports direction? To give a very brief history of this channel, it started out as kind of just toying around with different topics that I, was interested in, which pretty much fell into 3 categories. Either paleontology content, video game essay stuff, and sports. Sports was kind of planned from the get-go, but I started out doing paleontology and video game stuff. The video game stuff actually, found success. The Pyramid Head video was the kind of thing that initially kind of jump-started my channel. Why I don't really do them anymore and why I've kind of fully focused in on sports is because with paleontology, I'm really interested in the subject, but it is insanely difficult to actually make videos out of that since obviously there's no footage of dinosaurs or other prehistoric animals just out there. So you end up just using a lot and reusing a lot of just documentary footage, which is a copyright gray zone. And also, it doesn't leave a kind of style to your videos if you're just using footage from like multiple different documentaries across many years, some of which are outdated by now. So I kind of ran into a lot of issues with that. With video game stuff, what kind of turned me off from it, even though I found success, is that for one, it's such an oversaturated market. Like, video game, video essayists are literally dime a dozen, and it's hard to kind of make your own niche in that, if that makes any sense. And on top of that, I don't really consume media fast enough to make a channel out of it. Like, I play a video game, like, I play one for like 3 months before moving on to the next. And maybe I'll like replay like Fallout New Vegas in between. It's not really conducive to specialize in it. Which leads me to sports. First sports video, history of college football, was initially like a huge bust. Like, it sat at like 100 views for months. And despite that, I had the most fun making that. After the SMU video started to, do numbers, I kind of realized that, like, I can make something out of this. And this all coincided with, well, before even the history of college football video, that was where I was exposed to the history of the Atlanta Falcons by John Boyce and Alex Rubenstein. And that kind of changed my perception on how you can even make sports content on YouTube. And it's kind of inspired me to, specialize in it. So, long story short, yeah, I've fully committed to the sports direction. I might do like a one-off thing during Halloween. I still want to eventually make a video on the Silent Hill 2 remake. But for the most part, it's all sports. What is the best or most fun college football game you've watched? Again, going more recent, because there's a lot of college football games. A lot of good college football games. The most fun college football game I've watched recently was one of the worst. The 2022 Army-Navy game was such a funny game that it feels like not a lot of people remember, or even like care to remember. It was the first Army-Navy game to go into overtime, and the entire game was just running it up the gut and gaining like a yard max because everyone saw it coming, and then they just did it again. And I watched the whole thing with family, and I was joking throughout the entire game. Here's something they'll never see coming. They'll run it up the gut again for the 40th time in a row. They'll never see it coming. And I shit you not, every single time they ran it up the gut. It was like quintessential Army-Navy game. John Heisman rolling in his grave. I loved it. What is your opinion on super conferences? They're bad. Outside of that, I hold on to a very warped optimism that they'll collapse under their own weight. There's nothing to substantiate that. Looking back to the Wax collapse and looking further back to the SoCon, both were kind of super conferences that collapsed under their own weight, but both collapsed under reasons that are not applicable to like the current Big Ten and SEC. So it's unfortunate, but it's something that might just be here to stay. Any chance you would do Division 2 and 3 content? Yes, without a doubt. I already have a number of videos planned out for the FCS. I've been wanting to do one on Chicago for the longest time, and a few others. Slippery Rock as well, Slippery Rock in Michigan. The only problem with it is that to do Division 2 and 3 content, I would like to wrap it in either with a recognizable college like Chicago, or with a more well-established program like Slippery Rock in Michigan. Just so, it stays, for lack of a better term, appealing to the general audiences, than just doing a video on an interesting yet not really well-known Division 2 or 3 school. But yes, definitely. What is the most ambitious or largest project you want to or previously wanted to do? There's a few projects I've been looking at doing that I don't really want to reveal too much, but more live action, like to start doing like live action stuff in the field, going to games, going to tailgates and all that kind of stuff, to kind of get a feeling like beyond just when analyzing the history of a program, to not just get, secondhand, like, this is an article, this is a newspaper, this is, like, footage of a game. But to get, like, the actual, like, on-the-ground feeling these programs have, and their traditions, their all that kind of stuff. What rivalry are you planning to cover next? I don't really know. All I know is that I'm going to take a little bit of a break from the West Coast, because I've been there for the past 2 rivalry videos. I'm kind of split between Backyard Brawl, Border War, and Egg Bowl right now. Would you ever consider doing something on football tactics and strategy? Yes, I would. I would love to do deeper dives into, like, the histories of formations and stuff like that, and more of the intricacies of how the game works, rather than, like, histories on programs. I will say I'm not really a huge X's and O's guy. Not that I don't really want to learn it, more so I don't know it. So it would take a lot of preliminary research on my end, but I would love to do it sometime in the future. And to close us out, here's all the video ideas I got. By the way, keep them coming. I appreciate hearing what y'all want me to do next. They're ranked between, like, I'm absolutely planning on doing this and have already started planning out the video, to I'll probably get to it in the future. Thank you to everyone that sent in a question. I appreciate it a lot. And next video will be out pretty soon. So, see y'all then. And again, thank you for 10K. I'm still really speechless about it. I really appreciate it. Thank you.